Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 9 of the precision based build, and in this episode I'll be levelling and dressing the frets before getting some finish and a headstock decal onto the neck. So let's break out some masking tape. Okay, so to get things started on this neck, I'm not only going to cover the fretboard with masking tape as I normally would. Because this neck is completely unfinished, I'm going to completely cover every surface with masking tape just to keep any contaminants and dirt etc off it. It's pretty much sanded ready for finish, so I want to keep it as clean as I possibly can. Okay, so with the neck nicely mummified, the next thing I'm going to do is just take a nice big fat magic marker and put a coat of black over all the frets. And that will be our guide when we're doing the levelling, just to show us that we're taking it off evenly and that we haven't got any kind of low spots or low frets. Okay, so with those blacked up, I've also marked where the 12th fret is, because that's where the frets start to drop away a little bit. So I'm going to try and get between the 1st and the 12th frets flushed off nice and level, and then we'll see where we are with these. Now to do the actual levelling, I've got, it's actually an old level, but this has been quite carefully prepared, so it is really flat, and I've got a piece of 120 grit emery cloth double-sided tape to it. Now 120 is a little bit rougher than I would normally go in at, but the only 180 paper I've got that I usually use kind of loses all its grit after a couple of passes, so it stops being effective. So we're going to go with this at least for the first few passes. And to do this, I'm not going to kind of scrub away at it. I'm just going to take very gentle, measured strokes, following the radius of the fretboard as we go through. Okay, so that's the first pass done. And it's all really level up until kind of the 11th and 12th fret. There's a little bit of a low spot there, so I need to do a little bit more work. But on the whole, I've hardly taken any material off, and it's come together really nicely. Okay, so I've been over that now and levelled them all off. It's all looking really good. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take some finer paper. This is actually 320. And a little block of wood, which I know has got a nice flat face to it. And I'm just going to use this to polish out the scratch marks that the 120 grit has left in. And it doesn't take much, and you're not taking a great deal of material out there, so you're not going to affect the flatness and levelness of the frets. So with that done to 320, I'm going to get some just a little bit finer and go again, and then we can start to look at putting the crown back onto these frets. Okay, so they're all cleaned up much better now. We're not at the final finish, but all the big scratches are gone. But as you can see, the tops of these frets are now quite flat, some more than others. If we've had to take extra material out of them, they're kind of flatter, say in that case, than maybe the other two are. So to sort that out, first thing we're going to do is go back over them with a bit of black pen. Now there's various styles of crowning file that you can use. I prefer the old-fashioned triangular crowning file. And as you can see, this one has got safe edges on all the corners, so you're not going to dig into your fretboard. And it's simply a case of going over and putting the crown back into the fret. You can see there it's just left a little thin line of black in the middle of the fret. So I'm just going to work my way down the fretboard and do all of those frets in exactly the same way. Okay, and with that done, I'm just going to go in with a smaller diamond file and just take out any file marks that I might have left on the sides of these frets. Okay, so with that all done and the crown returned to the fret, the next thing I need to do is just kind of clean up these fret ends. You might be able to see there, it's a little bit square looking and you can feel it, it's quite sharp. So what I'm going to do is take the small fret dressing file and just round over all those edges. And give it a quick rub down. I think that's 320 wet and dry. It's hard to see because they're catching the light, but kind of putting a hemispherical end on the fret, and it's just really nice to the touch. So I've got to now do that to 20 frets twice, so that's going to take me a little while, so I'll join you back once I've done them all. Okay, so all those ends are now rounded over, really nice and smooth. So they feel really nice under your hand now. So the next stage is to kind of clean the rest of the frets up. And to do that, I'm going to use a set of fret erasers. And I've got 4 grades. I've got coarse, medium, fine and super fine. So I'm just going to work my way through the grits on each of these frets. And all these are, if you haven't seen them before, it's abrasive, suspended in a rubber medium, and they're kind of flexible, and they get into all the little nooks and crannies really nicely. So I'm going to repeat that process right the way down the fretboard. It's going to take me ages, so I'm not going to film it, and I'll see you back when I've done that. Okay, so they're all polished up now with the fret rubbers. They're already quite nice and shiny, but the next stage is I'm simply just going to take a Dremel, and I've got a little block of honing compound. I'm just going to use this to put the final polish onto the frets. Okay, and there they are, all nice and crowned, polished, super shiny. So that's that stage of the job done. So what I'm going to do now is, my hands have got quite a bit of gunk on them from doing this, so I'm just going to stick some rubber gloves on and get all this masking off. Okay, there we are, done. There's a little bit of cleaning up to do still, where some of that polishing compound has got beyond the masking tape, but it's really not that much. I'm just wondering if I could use one of these fret rubbers to get it off. Yeah, that works. So I'm really happy about the way those frets have gone. Despite all my fears about the unruly neck, I've managed to get them pretty straight. There's a little bit of drop off down the dusty end of the neck, but I wouldn't be venturing up there, so that's not a problem to me. Okay, with the frets done, it's now time to get some lacquer onto this neck. And in case any of you are wondering about the gun that I use on these projects, this is basically a very cheap HVLP gun that I got off Amazon. I've been recommended some more expensive ones, but I thought I'd try it out with a cheaper gun just to see how it went. And I have to say, this gun gives me the results that I want. I always have to put a bit of work in when it's cured, but I think that's always going to be the case anyway. So yeah, don't be afraid on buying cheap sometimes. It can work out. Okay, so I've spent a bit of time cleaning this back up now. Just got all of the little black marks off that have come through the masking paper. And I've sanded this down to kind of 500 grit, so it's nice and smooth, feeling really, really nice. I've taken the time to kind of go over it with a fine tooth comb and see if there was anything that needed fixing up. And there was one or two little spots that needed a bit of attention, but I think it's looking and feeling really nice now. So there's nothing left to do now but to get the curtains up, get this hung up and get a few coats of lacquer onto it. Okay, so I've left this overnight and it's dry to the touch at least. And I've just given the headstock a going over with a bit of 600 paper just to knock any high spots off, because now it's time to put the decal on. And I thought what I would do bearing in mind the rationale for building this base in the first place, is to just put a little bit of a hint to that on the headstock. So I've prepared a decal, and instead of saying precision base, what it actually says is pressure base. So I'm going to prep this up now and apply the decal in the normal way. Now all I've got here is a bowl of lukewarm water, and the first thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit onto the headstock where I want this decal to go. Now I'm using inkjet decal paper, and you simply run this through your inkjet printer, and once the ink has dried, you simply drop it into your water. It will go all curly, sink to the bottom handily. But then once it's ready to come off the backing paper, after a few seconds, it will start to straighten out and uncurl itself. As we can see it's doing now. And that should it's a little bit of a fiddle. And then we can just slide that into position. That we're happy with. And I think that looks quite good. So what we need to do now is just leave that for 10 to 15 minutes to dry. Once it's dried, this particular paper will go opaque white again, which isn't what we want in the final finish. But as soon as we hit that with a couple of coats of clear nitro, that will become translucent again. And I think with about 3 or 4 coats of nitro over the top of this, it will kind of sink itself, melt itself into the finish to the point where I'll be able to sand it down and it'll be flush, and you won't be able to see any join between the decal and the headstock. Okay, let's just let that dry off a bit. Okay, so this is dried off nicely now, so that's ready for its first coat. I looked at this when it was drying and I wasn't happy with the way that it was spaced, so I've kind of cut it in the middle and spaced it out a little bit, and I think that actually looks a lot better. So I'm just going to hit that with its first clear coat, and then over the course of the day I'll probably put 5 or 6 additional coats on top of that until I'm confident that the decal is properly buried in the lacquer. Okay, so that's the first coat on and rubbed down a little bit. The sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed that as I put the first coat on, it actually flipped the end of the decal up a little bit. Luckily, I spotted that in time and managed to just flick it back out again with a scalpel blade, and it's gone down okay. It looks fine from where I am, so I'm kind of happy with it. So I'll just continue now and spray the rest of the coats. Okay, and there we have the completed neck. Very, very pleased with the way it's come out, and hopefully once we get this cleaned up and polished a little bit, I can show you why I was so desperate to use this neck blank. I used another piece of the same board on the top of the Telecaster build that I did before this, and that's got some really nice figure in it, so I kind of understood that this neck would be the same, and there is. It's not wildly flamey or anything, but there's a really subtle kind of almost quilted look to the maple. So I'm really, really pleased with the way this has come out. The headstock decal has covered over really nicely. Obviously this all needs rubbing down and polishing up yet, but really happy with the way it's gone. With those jobs out of the way, we're really racing towards the finish line on this project now. So I'm going to be back in a couple of days when I'll bring the body back into the workshop, wet sand it, polish it, and then start to look at getting the electrics sorted out. So as always, if you've enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of days' time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.